Whenever I go to India or I go to China, I'm always asked one question. We want to go to Canada. We want to go to Canada. How do we get to Canada? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know, but I'll introduce you to somebody who can. And today we're with Marc Audet, all the way from AURAY Capital, and he's come all the way from Quebec, and he's going to answer the golden question about how people can invest and go to Canada. Marc, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Marc, tell us a bit about yourself and your firm.
Yeah, I'm the CEO of AURAY Capital. That's an investment dealer firm in Canada. We are a subsidiary of Grant Thornton, one of the largest accounting firm in the world, 135 countries. We are the leader on the immigrant investor program for the last 20 years. We have recruited over than 25,000 immigrant investors from 100 different countries, dealing with different immigration consultants and immigration lawyers around the world. And that's more or less, we're a team of 30 people, having offices in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. So we just welcome people to Canada.
Tell us about the Quebec Immigrant Investors Program. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, as you know, the Quebec Investor Program, that's the only passive investment program in Canada for the moment. We used to have another program called the Federal Investor Program. Yeah. And unfortunately, our Canadian government, they closed the program a couple of years ago. Okay. So just create more pressure on Quebec to get so many intake, application. And so that's very popular because, as you mentioned, Canada have a good brand overseas. And when you make the calculation of all the, I would say, all the specification that you can have in the program, Canada by far is like the number one regarding the investment amount, regarding the requirements, and maybe the restriction. So if we go a little bit deeper on the detail, actually the investor program is in moratorium, but will reopen soon. We have to deal with a quota system. Actually, the quota is fixed at 1,900 applications. Right. And Quebec government already put another quota. We cannot have more than 70% of that quota from China. Right. So because
you're openly getting a lot of Chinese.
Because Chinese application, as you know, for example, people who used to like the EB-5 program, now they have to wait over than 10 years. Yeah. So they don't want to do that, having kids and so and so. So Canada is a nice destination for that. On the other side, yes, we have, and the Quebec government now is looking to change a little bit the requirements. We used to be at $800,000 investment Canadian dollar, so that's mean more or less maybe 600,000 US or over than 400,000 pounds. They want to increase the threshold to 1.2 million Canadian dollar starting this August.
They want to increase it, or is it going to increase?
No, that's a regulation. They propose a regulation, so we're just waiting that it will be approved, but I think that will be the case. So
what's the current amount?
The current amount actually is 800,000 Canadian dollar. Right. The advantage that we have, because the difference is not like some other program that you have to invest in real estate or to give some donation
or something like
that. No, not at all. The investor.
There's no people. Or
that's it. No,
it's
a very straightforward deal.
Okay.
You just lend your money to the Quebec government for 5 years.
Okay. So it's like a loan.
It's a loan. You just loan.
Interest-free, right?
Yeah, that's it. So that's your cost for immigration, okay? Right. So you have to make your own calculation how much it costs you to lock $800,000 for 5 years. Okay. So some people will say, oh, it can be very costly because I cannot leverage that money. Yeah. So as you know, we have a loan option in Quebec designed with the banks. So instead that you lock $800,000 for 5 years with more or less 250,000 Canadian dollar, as a lump sum, you can be in with all your family, so spouse and kids under 22 years old. Wow. So and you get permanent resident status, the number one. Okay. It's no condition like maybe the EB-5 that you have a conditional green card and so and so.
Oh, so you're a landed immigrant?
Yes, landed immigrant, so you have all the same rights as any Canadian. The only right that you don't have is you cannot vote. That's it.
Right, okay. And so I get a lot of people from the UK saying we want to go to Canada, but we can't get work permits, they're hard to get, the companies are not sponsoring us, and we don't want to go under any other routes, we want to go there. What you're saying is for 250,000 Canadian dollars, and if they can loan the rest of the amount,
Yes.
then they can move to Canada. So I'm talking about husband, wife, and they say if we've got 3 kids under the age of 22,
Yes.
they can all go.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
they'll all be landed immigrants.
Yeah.
And that money will be locked for 5 years.
Yes.
And after 5 years, that money comes back.
The 800 is back when you put the cash amount. If you do the loan option, that's kind of prepaid interest as a lump sum.
Okay.
So you forget it. So the calculation, usually the investor, what he will do, because they are business people,
Okay.
they will say, okay, if I don't transfer the full amount and I keep 550,000 in my pocket,
Yeah.
and I bet that money in real estate and other stuff, can I make more than 200,000 out of the 5 years?
Yeah.
And usually at 99% the investor will say yes.
Yes.
And that's when they use the loan option.
Okay.
And you don't have to be at risk also with the exchange rate fluctuation, so the Canadian dollar, US dollar, or the sterling, and so and so. And people like, when you move to a country, you have a lot of expenses also, maybe a new property, cars, private school, and so and so. So people prefer to keep the cash, and that's the reason the loan option is so popular.
Is there any residency requirement? Do I have to stay
Yes.
in Quebec, Montreal for a certain number of years? Can I move around? Yeah, am I allowed to move around? And after how many years will I get the Canadian passport?
Yeah. You have to understand Canada, that's really an immigration country.
Right.
It's not a place that it's not an investment program, it's an immigration program through an investment.
Right.
As you know, maybe Canada welcome more or less 300,000 immigrants per year, all
Right.
category. And under the program, usually when you use, let's say, the Quebec channel, because you have the intention to settle with your family in Quebec, you don't want to settle your family in Vancouver. But in Canada, we have the Charter of Rights. The day that you do your lending, you become a permanent resident of Canada, you can do what you want. You can
Right.
move to another province if you like.
Wow.
But I will say we welcome people. Quebec have a lot to offer.
Yeah.
For European people, mainly it's 6-hour flight to Montreal, direct flight on daily basis. We're at 1-hour flight to New York or to Toronto. It's a good place to learn French and English for people, and so we're really multicultural city. So that's it. Yeah, people are free and to move if they. But I will say on the other side, when people compare also on the real estate costs, because people say, okay, maybe I will go to Toronto, I have some relative, or Vancouver. But the price of real estate, for example, is more affordable in Montreal for the moment than Toronto and Vancouver. So that's another thing that you should consider also.
What if I'm going to come from India or China, and I'm going to come to Canada? Can I come to Montreal? What sort of business can I do? What's the sort of main sort of source of income there? I mean, is it farming or is it trucking? I know a lot of Asians do trucking in Canada. A lot of them have blueberry farming, and is it still the same in Montreal, or or is there different businesses out there?
But I would say first on for the investor, most of them usually they continue to run their business overseas. That because the investor program is a passive investment, so usually they will come, they will settle their family, put the kids at school, university. We have very good university, international renowned like McGill, Concordia, and so they don't not necessarily looking to have a job. But under the investor category, the beautiful thing, you can do what you want. So if you want to go back to school yourself, you go back to school. You want to only to play golf, you play golf. You want to work, you work.
You want to flip burgers in McDonald's.
That's it. You do what you want. Okay. So that's easy
There's no
way.
restriction.
No restriction. And another beautiful thing is under the investor category is when you submit an application, each single member in the application, the spouse and the dependent, become a separate application. So that's mean later on, if you cannot, meet the requirement for the permanent residency and citizenship, and I'll come back to that question, doesn't affect the main applicant or the dependent and so and so. So
they're not all linked to the same
That's
applicant.
it. So for example, to come back to your first question is, on the residency, on a 5 years period, you have to be 2 years cumulative time in Canada out of 5 years.
2 out of 5.
2 out of 5.
That's not bad.
Okay, that's for the residency. So sometimes for a business person, do back and forth in this country, it can be sometimes difficult, but you can manage the traffic. So that's mean, and we have that flexibility. The day number one that you do your lending in Canada, you can lend in Canada for I'm just joking, but for 1 hour
Yeah.
or for 1 week or for 1 month and
that
go back to your
that
country.
activates your visa,
Yeah,
right?
you activate your visa and you go back to your country, and you can come back like 3 years later and you do full time
2
in
years,
Canada
yeah.
and you'll be okay. Okay?
Right.
So that's one thing. Regarding the citizenship, is out of period of 5 years, you have to be accumulate 3 years in Canada to get eventually to apply for the passport. So that's the rule. So mainly sometimes some business person, they say, okay, I cannot make it, but my kids are at university, so they are there full time. My spouse is there, so they have no problem to apply eventually to renew the residency, plus after that to apply directly for the passport. And when you become a citizen of Canada, you can do a sponsorship program. So that means you can bring back the main applicant if he cannot make it and so on.
Wow.
So there are different ways to do it. Regarding the business, to come back to the business, Quebec is it's a real active economy. We have a lot of natural resources. It's a large Quebec. It's a huge province.
Huge state, yeah.
We have about only 7 million population, more or less.
You're underpopulated, if anything.
Yeah, we can, but you know, it's like all Canada. Yeah, Canada is the second
need
largest
people,
country in the
yeah,
world,
yeah, yeah.
and we're about 37 million people.
I
you know?
noticed that when I drove
Yeah.
in Canada. So there were periods when I was driving for 20, 30 miles and I'd go without seeing a person or a car on the road. And I was thinking,
Yeah.
this is not England. This is, in England you can't move anywhere without seeing a person or a car. But yeah, there was plenty of space.
No, lakes, a lot of lakes. A lot of people from Europe come time to time, like a lot of French people come during the winter to do some snowmobile, to try other activities that you don't have here, and so and so. Some other one come for fishing, hunting, and so and so, and after that fall in love, buy a cottage and go like this, and after that go for immigration, and so and so. On the other side, over and above of the investor category, when you read all the newspaper in Canada, you will see that we have a shortfall on the skilled workers also on the other side. Yeah. The figures is about 400,000 people across the country. Only in Quebec, we're talking about 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So low to high skill, for example, welders, for example. So a lot of factories are looking for people to come. Sure, having the English or French speaking will help, and the diploma, but you can see the activities. If we're looking for this kind of skill, that you can see the level of activity of the economy in Canada. So regarding the other business, we have a lot of SME, a small medium enterprise.
Okay.
So people getting aging, I will say. So we have a lot of succession companies. So that means people can invest and buy companies. It's not because also that you are non-resident of Canada that you cannot do business in Canada. You can open a business, you can open a company and buy a company. And we have eventually what is coming under the Quebec Entrepreneur Program. That's the active investment. The people can start a business or create a business and create a job and so on. So we will have more detail. Actually, the program is in moratorium, but I think it will be another option for foreign business people to come to Canada.
Everyone loves Justin Trudeau outside of Canada. So everyone,
Mainly in India,
yeah. In India, UK, we love him here.
Yeah.
So in every country, has he made the rules a bit more liberal, a bit more relaxed as expected, or are they tightening up? What exactly is the situation with the rules?
No, I will say Canada changed a little bit. I think the goal, as I said, Canada is an immigration country. We have immigration policy. And so on. So the target is to have more or less 1% of the total population as immigrant per year.
Okay.
This year we will reach 300,000. The target for the next 2-3 years is to go up to 340,000 immigrants.
Wow.
So, and the population, as I said, is 37 million. So we should go close to 400,000 in the next maybe 10 years, something like that. The only thing now, as other country, we are moving the status of permanent resident status to temporary status because they want to make sure that we have the right people at the right place. You have a lot of people who immigrate to Canada having numbers of diploma and no job and become taxi driver, So now they don't want to do that anymore.
Okay.
So they will bring you because of your skill.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have different programs. We have a startup visa in Canada. That you just bring your brain and you have like a kind of a angel investor who will help you to start something.
And
So we have
express entry is all geared up towards skilled workers, right?
So that's it. So it's only for on the temporary basis. You have to make sure we have one is low skill. I will say is more like for like let's say for the summer. But we have like for high skill is a 2 years program. That you do a job with a company, and after 2 years you can apply for permanent resident status with your family, and so on. So we just try to tie it up exactly with the what we need as a job, and to make the match with the immigrant.
What are you looking for in an investor? What qualities do you look for? I mean, so if I said I'm an investor, what would you ask me for? What documentation would you ask me for? What would you be looking for?
But as you know, one of the reasons we are involved as we are an investment dealer, okay, the government, because we are authorized by the government. We are not like we are in partnership, I would say, with the Quebec government as a financial intermediary, because our job is source of funds and to make sure money laundering and all this. So that's part of our job. So we have to make sure that when you disclose that you have, let's say, a 3 million personal net worth, we have to see how did you accumulate that kind of money in the last 10, 15, or 20 years to make sure. It's not like maybe like the EB5 when you invest like a 500,000 US, you only to prove that amount of money. On the Canadian side, on the Quebec program, you have to prove $1 more or less to the last dollar. Right. So our job is to have your financial statement, your bank account, your contract, and so to make sure that that makes sense, that you accumulate such kind of sum of money.
You're a genuine investor.
That's it. It's legal activities. After that, one of the requirements is management experience. So you can be a VP of a bank, insurance company, or you be the president of your own company. So out of 5 years, you have to prove 2 years management experience on financial material resources. And after that, it will be the investment at the time. So, and the beautiful thing, if you compare with other programs, you don't have to make the investment day number one. You make the investment when you are approved, pre-approved by the Quebec government. So you don't have to lock money right away, like the EB5, that you lock your money and you don't know if it will be approved or not.
Okay. Is there a language requirement? Do I need to speak English or French in order to enter this program?
Technically speaking, no. I will say that's money talk. I'll say that's a immigrant investor program. But you have some points, for French and English speaking. The other advantage that you have when you have a French speaking level, you can be fast track on the processing. Okay. So Quebec process like in 2 months, more or less, a French speaking client. So to get the certificate selection of Quebec. So you already select by Quebec at that time. If you compare for the other non-French speaking client, the other processing time is about 8 months now. Okay. It's still very fast on the Quebec side, but you have to go after that on the admission. That's a medical security check. That takes more time because that's, they have to do a lot of job to make sure.
So with the amount rising now, it will be rising to over 1 million.
Yes.
So are you expecting an influx of applications before this deadline?
No, because actually, as I said, the program is in moratorium, so we don't take any. We're taking application, but we cannot submit the application for the moment. Okay. The only thing I will say is as it's normal when you increase the threshold, usually you have less people who can apply. That's normal. But on the other side, because actually under the 800,000 program, the demand is strong. Yeah. I think will continue to be strong because that's the only passive investment program for Canada. Wow. Canada has a very good brand. Knowing that what's going on the U.S. with the processing time for Chinese, and now it's become for Vietnamese and Indian and so on, so because they have more applications they receive. And a lot of people that they have the North American dream, not necessarily the European dream or Caribbean dream and so on. So everybody have their own option. And I will say maybe a change a bit on the profile because actually a lot of our Chinese investors, for example, are more manager than business owner. Okay? But if we increase the threshold and require $1.2 million investment, I think we'll have more business owner. And when you're a business owner, sometimes, on the documents, it's a bit more difficult. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you have different way to do the business. It's not like when you're an employee and a manager, you have a contract, you have your salary, you have your bonus, it's very clear. So it will be more challenging a little bit for us to prepare the file.
Mark, anything else you want to say finally in a summary?
In summary, I say, Canada still a very good place to be. I think people should really consider whatever. If you're looking for a passive investment, I think Quebec is a very good choice, as I said.
It's safe as well, Canada. A lot of people say it's safe.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the only place, the only country where you can leave your front door open and not get robbed.
yeah, and maybe same thing with your car and so. I will say, but each country, each city have its pros and cons. But as I said, Canada is so big as a country. You can divide the country in three parts. I will say on the Quebec side, on the East Coast, Quebec has more European flavor, I will say. And you go on the center, like Ontario, is more maybe American flavor.
Yeah.
And on the British Columbia side, we have more Asian flavor, I will say. So some people say, if I move from a country to another one, I don't want to have the same setup. I would like to integrate myself with my family. And why not, to ask my kid to learn French at the same time and will be more international person eventually in the future. So that's what Quebec has to offer.
Thank you very much, Marc.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming
Best.
and thank you for explaining.